right? We're moving along. We are now live streaming. Got it. Let's go.
We're live.
We are live.
We are in the building. We have arrived.
Hey, what's the big announcement that you want to share with the Facebook Live?
Okay, everybody stop. Listen. Something big has happened. We just hit 500 Facebook group members. Another win for a Wednesday.
Yeah.
Literally just before we pressed record, we had one person request to join.
Yeah.
So, hey, you know what? Just stacking up wins every day, just stacking up wins.
Cool. Exciting stuff. Today, we're talking about building out leadership teams, right? We're going to start with what it takes to put a clinic director in place. But for those who are listening on the podcast, hey, welcome. Nathan Shields with Physical Therapy Owners Club podcast. I'm joined by Adam Robin, good buddy and partner in the Physical Therapy Owners Club. Let's talk about it, man. I think that's something that everyone obviously knows at some point as they are growing their team, that the owners are moving their way up the organization, that they need to fill in the leadership posts behind them, right?
Uh-huh.
And one of those posts is clinic director. Where do you want to start with this?
People get stuck here. There's just like this little crossroads where you have to like clone yourself. So like everything you've learned, now you have to teach somebody else.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like the student becomes the teacher. It's a transition, you know, it's a challenge to kind of redefine your role again in the company and enter into like a new phase of like a higher level delegation. Right. But not just like strategically offloading that hat, but like the leadership piece of like,
of it.
Yeah. And like getting alignment on the culture and the values and, you know, measuring the dynamic between the visionary and the integrator and being comfortable with being told no and learning to let go of things and all that mindset stuff that comes with.
You know where I think it starts as I look back on my journey and the journey of other clients that we worked with is the planning for an eventual clinic director to come into play doesn't start soon enough. Right? So as you're a single practitioner in a clinic, and if you have plans for growth, and if you have plans to eventually expand to more than just you and another practitioner, and especially if you want to expand to another site altogether, you're going to have a clinic director in place. So I think owners, and I'm thinking about myself especially, don't think about hiring for a future clinic director in the first place. I think they go into hire just to find a physical therapist that aligns, that will be productive, that can teach and train and whatnot. Maybe you're not looking at that new grad in such light that they eventually become a clinic director, but they very well could within, 2 to 3 years. And so maybe it's not just in their mind as they're looking at these physical therapy hires in the first place, at what are some of the skill sets that I'm looking for that aren't just meeting my needs now, but could I see this person in a potential leadership position? Because unfortunately, when they need a clinic director, they're going to go start to look and hire for the clinic director to come on rather soon. And I haven't seen that work out so well a lot of times. Typically, you're wanting to grow that person from within, and it's going to take some time to ramp them up to a position where you can feel comfortable. Number one, you got to make sure that they're value aligned and that they mesh with the culture. And that's going to take a couple of years to get used to. You're going to want to ensure that they're one of the most productive people on your team, ideally. And then you got to give them some time to train them on how you want them to lead, right? Follow these policies, procedures, track these stats. Here's how we hold people accountable, yada, yada, yada. that all takes some time. And so I wonder if we don't start early enough in the hiring process to look for future clinic directors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think so, but it's hard for me to have too much input on this because I only have my experience. But I know that when I was growing the practice and I was figuring it out, and I was like, I had Nathan Shields telling me to build a KPI dashboard and to do this for marketing and to blah, 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 blah. And like, I was just so focused on like learning and implementing and like pushing through discomfort that I couldn't see it. You know what I mean? Like I was so stuck in the day to day, I couldn't see it. And I remember very vividly asking you because like I wanted to take over the world and I wanted to open 500 clinics, but I didn't really know how to get there. And I remember asking you, what do I need to open up a second location? And you said, well, you're going to need a leadership team. And I remember thinking to myself, like, yeah, like what is that? You know what I mean? I'm like, what do you mean? Like a leadership team, So it's hard to kind of get too far ahead of that whenever you don't even know what the heck it is.
Right. It's exactly what you're talking about is how do I find people that are clones of myself?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the hardest part in doing that is I think one of the hardest things to do for owners is to really learn to write down or iterate exactly what you do, because it comes so naturally that I just do it. But I'm not, in my mind, I'm not checking off boxes. I just naturally go through these processes. And so that can be hard. It might take some support from a coach like you and me to say, okay, well, what do you do in this situation? How do you want to address this? Have you considered this? And maybe give you some guidance. And all right, let's write that out. And here's how you collect stats. Here's how you have a monthly meeting with your providers. Here's how you run a staff meeting. And so that can be the most difficult part, but you tell me, and because you've gone through it more recently, once you start to figure those things out and iterate them, that process starts becoming easier in terms of developing the systems over and over and over again in different areas of the clinic. Is that about right? Is that how you felt?
Yeah. I think that you have to just kind of get in there and then just start kind of getting your hands dirty, just like anything else, And, the first time I kind of decided like, okay, my clinic was, 200-ish visits a week. I had maybe like 4.5 FTEs. I really wasn't treating much, if at all. And I was in a place where I was like, okay, I'm going to start to build what I need to open up my second location. And so on my Monday morning, the first thing on my list was have a meeting with the person who I thought would be great and tell them, I don't know what the heck I'm doing, but we're going to figure out how to turn you into a clinical director. Yeah. Do you want to do this with me? And I didn't have it all figured out. It's kind of goes back to that thing of like, don't wait until you have it all perfect before you just start jumping in. Yeah. And that's how it really starts. And then you go in there and you debate and you say like, well, I see it like this, but I see it like this. And okay, well, can we meet in the middle? What can we let go of? And you kind of go through that journey of like slowly kind of like giving that person what they need to be successful until they get to a place where it's like, okay, I can do this better than you can. You need to leave now.
Well, and James Savas is listening. Hey, good to see you there, James. It's been too long, but developing out a mentorship program. And I think a lot of that can be, even if you don't have something written out, if someone followed you as you went through some of these things, maybe they shadowed you. You don't want to take them off the floor too much. I understand that because maybe they're losing productivity in doing so. But if you could hand over little things here and there. You've seen us do staff meetings. Well, I'm going to turn them over to you now. Hey, come sit with me while I put together the stats. Here's the stat sheet that I use, and this is where I find them in our EMR to fill this out, or this is what the front desk or my VA provides me. Let's review it together like I do every other week. Just be there with me, right? Let's do this in concert so I can talk you through it as I go. And as you're doing some meetings with providers, they can sit in on those meetings, right? Because we learn pretty quickly that just giving someone a clinic director title because they're the most experienced and or the most productive was not necessarily the smartest thing to do, because not every super productive physical therapist is appropriately trained in leadership. You can't just equate that a good therapist equals a good leader. Those are two different skill sets, right? Some of the best therapists that I had, the team didn't really want to follow them. They weren't leadership material. So
Right.
We would give them the title of clinic director in charge or in training. Clinic director in training did not come with a salary bump. But we made it known to the team, here's our clinic director in training. And that's something that people can vie for if you've got a number of providers on your team. But if you're smaller, you have these conversations ahead of time. Hey, are you interested in a leadership path? Yes, this is what that looks like. Here's some books to read. Let's talk about them, yada, yada, yada. And then give them a clinic director in training title. And they can start doing some of these shadows for you. They can start managing staff meetings. They can sit in on some of these meetings, and the team understands why they're there. This is part of what's happening. And they can also give you feedback at the same time as to how well they are fulfilling those responsibilities. So there are opportunities there to build those out. It doesn't have to be written out, like you said. It doesn't have to be perfect, especially, but you can start doing some of those things to mentor them in what leadership looks like in your clinic.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And I'm a fan of writing things out, but I'm not a fan of making them 500 pages long.
Yeah.
Like make it 2 pages long. You know what I mean? Like let's just keep it simple. Like that's how I've always operated, and that's always served me well.
Mm-hmm.
But just having a loose framework that also provides you with a little bit of flexibility.
Have you had some of those people that you've worked with do the writing of it for you? Like during their mentorship, they could be just taking notes, and this is how we do things. And so you don't have to sit down and do the writing yourself. Have you ever done that?
Not with I'm sure that, so we have a leadership program that we've built out, and it's robust. I spent a long time putting it together, and I'm really glad that I did, because now we use the same terminology. We use the same language. We think the same way.
Yeah.
When we define problems or challenges, we approach them with the same perspective. But as more and more people have gone through it, then they're like, hey, you know what? This isn't quite what we do anymore.
Yeah.
And so they modify it as
they're responsible they're responsible
correct
for updating it and whatnot.
Correct. Updating it, you know what, that book really doesn't really hit where we want it. This one is what we like. We'll change out the books and we'll do that. So what I find is, and you could tell me if I'm wrong here, but like once you're a really good therapist and you can get the leadership piece, then becoming a clinical director is really just putting the two together. You're basically just applying the leadership as a great therapist. Mm-hmm. Somebody who can sell the plan of care, somebody who is productive, somebody who can bill, somebody who can manage the metrics, somebody who knows how to run the practice.
Yeah.
And so when you apply the leadership, you've got it. You've built out the role. You're 95% there.
You know what's really cool when you find that person is the team. Tell me what your experience is, but my teams would almost respond better to them than they did to me.
Mm-hmm. I've got a theory on why that's true.
Yeah, tell me about it. What do you think? Because I saw that happen. I just noticed there was a different vibe in response to the clinic directors, the good clinic directors that I had. When they knew how to rally the troops seemingly better than I could. I don't know. Is that what you've experienced?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Here's my philosophy. Yeah. So you're me as the CEO, I'm the visionary, right? And I'm really good at ideas. I'm really good at making changes and generating excitement. But I suck at being clear. I suck at holding people accountable. Oh, there's the thing again. And sometimes people can walk away after I like visionary vomit all over them. They can kind of be like, what the hell did he just say? You know what I mean? Like, this guy is in fantasy land. But the director that we started with, her name's Heidi, and she's amazing. What she's great at is like, Nathan, I need you to do the XYZ. Good? Good. Okay, thank you. And like getting more things done with clarity and direction.
Right.
And people are like, yes, I understand you. Like, I get it. Right. So they're really good at, they're really good at like making things digestible. And I think that's why they like hearing from them and they respond, because they're less confused.
Yeah. I also think they really appreciate somewhat of a peer being their leader and not the management or the ownership being the leader. I think there's just maybe a level of comfort, but also respect that's given because they recognize that here's someone who deservedly has stepped into leadership because of their technical traits, maybe even their productivity traits. And so I'm willing to give that respect to them, not because they're an owner, but because I choose to give that respect, right? Not because I'm forced to give the respect to the owner because they're the owner. I mean, it's theoretical in practice, essentially, but there's definitely a benefit there, and they're able to talk to them on a level that is not necessarily self-serving. I mean, that's one of the issues as we're talking about stats and numbers for an owner to present to the teams, is they could very easily make the connection between improving these stats and money in the owner's pockets, right? And it's very important that, and I've said it so many times, it's very important that you make that connection between stats and the purpose of the company. Now, your clinic director needs to do the same thing, but then the team isn't able to easily draw the distinction between stats and money in the clinic director's pockets. Maybe, I mean, they shouldn't necessarily know what the compensation package is. And so there maybe is a profit sharing situation or some kind of bonus for the performance of the clinic, but they can't as easily tie that push for improved statistics, improved productivity, increased results for our patients, and the purpose of it, and the lining of the owner's pockets, right?
Uh-huh.
So I think there's an acceptance of that as well from the teams, that they're able to recognize that we're doing this in the best interest of the business and the patients, not necessarily in the best interest of the owner.
I agree. It comes down to, I know we're kind of getting a little bit off topic, but it's an interesting topic, but it also comes down to just the social proof of like, oh, like the owner has been telling us this for a long time, and now there's another person. So now there's two people, right? And then the more people that you can rally around you to support the vision, then there's more social proof for the team to believe in. Right. And so people are more bought in, as opposed to you being the only person with all the answers who's got an emotional and financial incentive. You know what I mean? It can be interpreted a lot. It can be harder to navigate that scene.
So as you're looking at hiring clinic directors, and you've been successful and failed a couple times.
Yes, I have failed.
Join the club. What are some things now that you've gone through that experience that you're looking for a potential clinic director? What are some of the things? What are some of the boxes they've got to check?
Well, I think that really comes down to your values.
Yeah.
Just like everything. I need a killer. You know what I mean?
Does that mean?
I need somebody who's gritty,
Mm-hmm.
who's going to do whatever it takes, has a servant's heart, who cares about people more than anything else. Like, kind of like that ferocious, humble servant, and so like, I'm looking for people who can inspire the team, who can rally the team, who can get the team to do hard things and still like being here. Like, embrace challenge, embrace hard work, and see the good in that. Production is the basis of morale, right? Like, understand that hard work is part of growth. That's really it. And if I can have that alignment and that commitment to that, then the culture is going to be there, and then we can do whatever we want.
Yeah, I can totally parallel what you said there. Number one, they've shown a technical capability to perform.
Of course. Right. Yeah.
Production, they're the kind of person you can give them a task and they're going to get it done.
We want patients to come to your clinic because they want to see them.
Yeah.
Because they want to see them, because they're the best therapist there.
Yeah. That's huge, right?
Right.
Just to follow up on that, part of our leadership training is to give them some homework assignments.
Uh-huh.
If they know that they're on the leadership path, and we've talked with them about being on the leadership path, is to give them homework assignments like people who can see a problem and recommend a couple of solutions without just seeing the problem without just seeing the problem and saying, well, I'm not the owner, so I guess I won't take care of it.
Well, yeah, that's a deal breaker.
Totally, right? You do have to kind of train them on that and just say,
right,
hey,
right.
If you were the leader and you recognize the problem that you brought up, what would you do about it? Right? And let them come up with some of the solutions, and then say, all right, which one do you recommend we follow? Okay, you recommend that one. You feel good about following through on that, and I'll provide you all the resources that you need. And then, it could be something as simple as laundry or managing the texts, if you use texts and stuff like that, homework assignments like that. So people who can follow through and get things done, people who can, who are willing to do the work on behalf of the clinic, and their first question not be, how much are you going to pay me for that?
No.
Right? Have you had the negative experience? And I was just going to say, from my perspective, the clinic directors that didn't work out were the ones that were focused on the money.
Yeah, I haven't had those.
Yeah.
Yet.
They just didn't. They were never satisfied.
Yeah. I can see how that would be hard.
It was always like there was always some kind of exchange that had to happen. And so, and I'm willing to pay more for things if you're able to show that leads to more production or a greater
statistical change.
Yeah, but yeah, exactly. And so, anyways, people who are focused on that usually didn't work out too well. Yeah, and then they also have to have follow along with the values. So professionalism, they got to be professional in their attitudes and their workplace habits and their interactions with the teams. They tend to stand out. These are typically your A players. You're not necessarily your B players. Your B players are great physical therapists, but maybe not great leaders. And so, yeah, they have to check some boxes. You talked about your leadership training program. What are some of the basics of it? If you were a coaching client of ours, it would be in the vault, right?
It's in the vault.
It's in the vault.
In the vault.
So you can access it that way. But what are some of the highlights of your leadership program as you're training them?
So mindset, right? Mindset is going to be a piece of it. Really understanding the abundance versus scarcity, right? And, managing risk and managing fear. Like, so there's some mindset pieces, also some personality assessments.
Okay.
So you can kind of understand a little bit about people and different types of people and different ways people tick. So mindset is a piece. Number 2 is going to be time management, right? So like, how do you manage your time? And everybody has a system. It might not all be documented, but everybody has a system in a way of managing their priorities. And in our company, this is how we do it. We manage our priorities like this. This is the tools that we use. This is how so kind of getting us some alignment on that. Leadership principles, leadership and self-deception, the 7 habits of highly effective people, reading some books.
Yeah. The books that
and then I would
influential to you.
You're correct. And then I would say another big piece is just going to be the statistical side of the business. So a little bit more of a deeper dive into the statistics, what they mean and how they tie to the financial aspect of the business, and making sure that they're ready to have conversations about money and the significance of that. But those are some of the big highlights that we have.
Yeah.
Managing conflict with the team, and values, vision, how to cast vision, right? Casting vision in the team meetings.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, very, very similar stuff. Ours was along the same lines, that they would go through this process, and honestly, it doesn't take a super long time to put that together, I'm assuming. I mean, yours is fairly robust, so you've added to it over time, but it's something that if this owner had their 4 to 8 hours per week, they could build something out over the course of a few weeks, if not a week or two, right? How is that what you've experienced as you initially laid down the skeleton structure of the leadership program? How long did that take you?
It took me less time to build it. It took me a lot more time to envision it, if you will, right? Because a lot of times I'll have this conversation with, we're talking about that stage 3 owner who's like, you're kind of over $1 million a year or getting close, and you don't really have a high stress life. Your clinic's doing pretty well financially. You're eating good, you're getting home on time. Maybe your mornings are starting a little later, I'll ask them like, okay, what are you going to do for developing your clinical director? And it's like, well, I don't know. Like, how do I teach them? And I always ask them, what are all the things that you've learned over the last year about business? What are the books that you've read? What are the podcasts that you've listened to? What are the ways that you manage your time? What are the ways you manage your fear and your insecurities and having hard conversations with your team? Like, remember all that stuff? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, that's what you teach them. Right? And so like, there's a mindset shift. And so I didn't really have a lot of structure when I built it.
Okay.
Sure. So it took me a little while to kind of put all that together. But if you sit down there and you just jot down your favorite books and your favorite podcast episodes, you can just fill in the blanks.
That's a great place to start.
Yeah. It's a really great place to start.
Yeah. And start talking. Hopefully if you're listening, you're part of a network of some kind or other, right? Whether it's on the Facebook, with peer-to-peer networking groups or a mastermind group of your own with small business owners. Just start talking to people about what are some ideas that you have in regards to leadership development. What are some things you recommend? And I think one of the first things you highlight, of course, is value alignment. We say that over and over again. Value alignment obviously plays out over time. As you worked with this person over the course of a year, 2, 3 years, you should, number one, have your values written out and explained what they are, and that you're living by them, and that you're talking about them regularly, and that you're hiring and firing according to your values. So I'm taking all that for granted. But if you haven't done that, it's worth the effort. But you can definitely start there and start talking to them about values, and maybe if it's a one-on-one meeting with them, you could say, how could we better live out our values, and start working with them in that regard, and start getting their 2 cents. I mean, that right there is part of leadership. And I think what I'm saying there, and what you were saying as well, Adam, is that it will take you becoming the coach.
It will take you becoming the coach.
Yeah, you're going to coach them into the clinic director position.
Man, this unlocks so much. When you learn to sit in the role of a coach, I'm going to tell you the first thing that gets better: recruiting. You learn to recruit like a monster because you're coaching now. You're above them, right?
Well, you're above them, but you're serving them.
Correct, right. Well, you've elevated your self-worth, you've elevated your purpose, and now you feel like you have something to give.
Right.
Right. And then your ability to believe in yourself goes through the roof, and you can start recruiting and influencing your team in a lot better ways.
Right. I love how you said that, and how you made the connection with recruiting, because now you're coming at a place from trying to sell somebody on something versus trying to serve somebody.
Correct.
To bless their lives. Right.
Correct.
And people buy into, if you're being pushed to be sold, naturally our instincts start to push back against it.
Correct.
You know, someone walks
into a
retail store and say, hey, how can I help you? I'm just looking.
Back off, buddy.
Especially at the car dealership. Hey, what are you looking for? I'm just looking. But when you come with a heart of service, and you're like, I have something to offer. I'm willing to help you, and I want to serve you, and I will. If you're wanting to do leadership, hey, let's talk about it. Where do you want to go, and how fast you want to make this? Because
yes,
I've got all the time to help you along. Right. So it takes a different mindset.
It takes a huge mindset shift, but it is a powerful one. It's a lot of mindset work. I have one question for you though.
Yeah.
So you failed. I failed. And we've seen others fail. What do you see as the biggest challenges that owners have with this? Like why do they fail?
Well, I think, so the ones that haven't worked for me are the ones that I mentioned were a little bit more focused on money.
Uh-huh.
The others that failed were ones in which I assumed, because of their level of experience in the field, like they were aged physical therapists, that they were going to be great directors. And so I just made the assumption, and I didn't have any leadership training stuff in place, even for the experienced PT to transition over to clinical leadership. But I just assumed that based on them being in multiple places and seeing how leadership was done in multiple places, that they could just transfer the best parts of those leadership experiences and take them upon themselves to lead in my clinic, not necessarily the way I would lead. And so that didn't work out well. It worked out horribly because it ruined the culture. The people who had been with me a long time were like, what the hell is going on here? And
Nathan, what did you do?
Yeah, and I'm trying to give the guy the benefit of the doubt, while the rest of the team is like, this guy is sinking the ship. and Nathan is oblivious to it. I'm trying to be the kind-hearted guy that's giving him opportunity after opportunity and looking past his mistakes. It wasn't until he self-selected and quit before he left. But luckily he did for me, and I was forced to look somewhere else. It was those two things, just not assuming that an aged physical therapist was going to take that on. Problems with people who were focused on the money part of it. And I'd say number 3, I just have to take the blame in that I didn't prepare for those leadership call ups, essentially. I didn't train them. I didn't have a leadership training module in place, even a simple one, to see if they vibed with me, if they were willing to do the work. Like, you're going to read a book on your own time, and no, I'm not going to pay you for it.
Right.
And talk about it. Right. Maybe I'll throw them a bone. Hey, we had a library. If people wanted to read anyone could have read our business books that we recommended, and we'd pay them $50 if they read it.
Oh, really?
And talk to us about, we're like, we would love for you guys to learn about what we're learning, because we think it's amazing stuff. If a PTA or a tech wanted to read those same books, go to it, dude. That's cool. But if you wanted to be on leadership, you had to read them. All right. And that was on your own time. And so we didn't have those trainings in place. And that was on me. Even a simple amount of mentoring or structure in place would have gone a long way.
If you can think back when you were training your first director, how did you, eventually there's going to be some conflict, right? Like, you're the visionary, they're the integrator, and there's some debate. There's some like, I don't think you're right on this one, Nathan. Nobody's ever really told you no before, Was that a hard thing?
I had some strong-headed employees that did.
Did you? Was that
to go with my side?
Was that a hard thing for you to do, for you to overcome, to figure out?
Well, for me, me by this point, I'm willing to give in, to make things go well. So whenever there was a conflict like that, that's the point where I would say, okay, you think you're right. I'm coming from this perspective. Okay, we're going to do it my way, unless you come at me with the reasons and the statistics as to why we should do it your way. Right. Sometimes I would even give, if I could understand where they were coming from, like, I think we need to do this to improve cancellation rates. I'm like, I don't know. If I came from a place of experience, I would say, I've tried that in the past. This is how it works.
Right.
But if I'm not coming from a place of experience, it would be like, hey, I'm willing to try it, but you're in charge of it. Right. So I'm usually willing to, if I don't see it being, if I don't see their solution being the end of my company altogether and not creating any major damage, I'm willing to let them try it, because we can always pivot.
That might be why you were such a good leader.
Well, I'm always, I mean, we can always pivot, and I could just say, okay, how long are we going to give this? Let's give it a try. How's it going to work? What are you expecting? And how long do we give it before we pull the plug if we have to? What are some of the things we're going to see this doesn't work? And I want to give them ownership.
Right.
I want to give them ownership as much as possible. And it might not be the way I would have done it, but I've got to feel comfortable with them doing it their way and owning it. I mean, because you do want them to have some autonomy to a point. I mean, if you want to go on vacation for 4 weeks, which would be a great goal, you want them to be able to think for themselves and not wait for the owner to show up.
That was a really hard thing for me to learn.
Where did you eventually land on that? How do you handle it?
Just gave up.
You just let them do it?
Yeah. So I remember being the guy that was like, hey, Nathan, I'd like you to lead out on the team meeting. Here's the agenda. This is exactly how I want you to say it. This is the time that I want you to say it. And then I want you to report exactly that you did it exactly the way I would do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I see that a lot in owners. And it's hard to let go. It's hard to let go of your baby, of the thing that you've blood, sweat, and tears and just built from the ground up, and you actually have to let it go. And the hardest thing, what I had to learn was the difference between debate and conflict, healthy debate, and misalignment.
Oh, okay.
Those are two different things.
Right.
Right. I had to learn this thing of like, when people would tell me no, or like, you're wrong, you shouldn't do it like that, I would get like defensive. I'd be like, you're wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I actually fully let go and delegated the outcome.
Yes.
Delegate the outcome, but let them figure out the process.
Mm-hmm.
And once I started figuring that mindset piece out and showing up with that type of approach, people were like, oh yeah, Adam's a pretty good boss. I like Adam, you know? And then things unlocked.
Oh,
and then I was able to run. So that's a hard thing for people to figure out.
Yeah,
That's
there's a difference. I was talking to someone last night. There's a difference between techniques and standards. And I guess they talk about that in the military quite a bit. Like there's a certain standard that's met, and certain leaders within the military will use different techniques to meet that standard. And the techniques in and of themselves can be fine as long as the standard's met.
Correct.
Right. And I think that's what you're getting at when you delegate the outcome, right?
Correct.
And of course, you do have to say, if they're going to change the meeting agenda and you're walking in, maybe you're just sitting in on a staff meeting that you don't usually sit in on. But maybe the tone's a little bit low. Maybe it's not as exciting. Maybe the culture's looking a little rough. Maybe it's a little bit cold, and they've totally revamped the agenda. Well, then it's time to come back and say, okay, what's going on? And what happened to blankety blank part of the agenda? I mean, there's going to be some that are like, this is going to happen whether you like it or not type of things. Like, we're going to discuss values in each team meeting, or at least we're going to talk about that. That's not going away, right? We're going to make sure we have, we're going to be professional and be on time. Okay, let's just focus on at least those two things. Outside of those two things, I'm pretty open to whatever else you want to do, as long as it's productive for you and the team, and the stats are maintaining their high levels, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there are some no rule breakers, right? But typically, my good leaders agreed with me on the things that had to be done.
Right. Yeah.
And I found that, especially as I pulled myself off the floor, the same thing. When I pulled myself off the floor treating, I was still present. I was in a far back room, office room, that was down a hallway about 30 feet. And the PTAs would still come down the hallway, even though I wasn't treating on the floor, and be like, hey, Mr. So-and-so's here. You worked with him in the past. You know his situation. But I'm thinking about, he's got this, that, and the other thing. They're like, how do you think I should handle it? I said, I had to start over and over being like, what do you think you should do about it?
Uh-huh.
And they'd be like, well, I've come here to ask you what you should do about it, because you're the owner. And they're like, well, I hired you because you have a brain, and I trust you. And so I think you can handle this. Tell me what you think you should do. And they say, I would do this and that. And sometimes they'd say what I would do, and sometimes they wouldn't. I'd say, either way sounded good to me. Go ahead and do it however you like it. Tell me how it goes. And it wasn't until they asked me that about 10 times before they stopped coming back, asking, how should I handle this? And I come back at them with, how do you think you should handle it? So giving them that ownership, just like pushing it back on them. Yeah, you can do it. You can try that technique. Let me know how it goes. Let's make sure the standard is met, though.
Yeah. It's amazing when you get a good leader in there.
Huge.
Man, it's a game changer.
It's almost as important as an amazing front desk person.
I think those are the two most important positions in the whole company. It's your director and your front desk person. They drive the bus.
I think the front desk person saves you a ton of money and makes you a ton of money. I think the clinic director saves you a lot of headache and heartache, because they're capable of maintaining your culture and productivity. The front desk person is going to be, even though the providers should be, typically it's the front desk person that's the face of the clinic.
Right.
Especially if they're good. Right?
Yeah.
They're collecting the co-pays. They're getting people to reschedule instead of cancel. They're signing them up for the full plan of care at the initial eval, handling concerns, handling the phone calls, being the face of the clinic, and that kind of stuff. They're so good. But yeah, in different ways, those two positions can really revamp your company altogether, for good and bad.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, building a clone. That's what it is.
That's what
Building a clone.
What else do you want to cover about clinic directors, man? Did we hit everything, you think?
Yeah, we did talk about, leadership team, but I think the clinical director is the first leader that you build, that you train.
Yeah.
But if you can zoom out, because eventually you're going to open 5 locations, right? So you'll have 5 directors. And then you might also have like a director of marketing, director of recruiting, director of administration, right? Director of finance. So it's all the same game.
Right.
It's all the same game. Leadership, right? It's all the same game. Debate, conflict, time management, KPIs, stats. And that is your ability to train and produce leadership in the company is the game. That's how you win at business.
Yeah. I think it's where you really start seeing a level of enjoyment from a different space. I should say that differently. The fulfillment is different. What I recognized in the development of a team was a fulfillment that was different than getting patient results one-on-one, right? It was different, and it was really satisfying. And to see that my influence now started to pervade in a greater capacity than just a one-on-one relationship with my patient was intoxicating. Really. I mean, that is what led me it changed my mindset from, I wish someone would take all the business headache off my plate so I could treat patients full time, to, I don't want to treat anymore. I just want to grow this thing and build a team that I love. Right. And in a culture that I was proud of, right. And people that I had confidence in. That was more invigorating. My mindset shifted from one to the other that I would never have expected. I treated for 10 years wishing someone would take the business stuff off my plate. And then I switched over to, I'd rather work on the business and build this thing and take the treatment stuff off my plate, because I got a ton of fulfillment and joy from seeing my team grow. And in that, exactly what you're talking about, taking that leadership training program, not just for a clinic director, but it was the same thing for my director of marketing. Like you said, we had 4 clinics. We had a full-time director of marketing. She got trained just the same as my clinic directors did. Similar process, just different aspects to their job responsibilities. And then same thing, I even had a lead technician at most of my clinics, because we had a handful, say 4 or 5 technicians, all kind of part-time, various schedules. That could be a huge headache for a clinic director. Well, if one of them has a little bit of seniority, let them manage the schedules and the accountability and the training of the techs, right? And I'd pay them a little bit more, but they went through the same process. They would do the same things, but just specific to their job. So like you said, that kind of process and building out that team can really lead to a lot more fulfillment and success and joy for the owners. And then expansion becomes a lot more easy. And I think that's what you noticed as you did develop that team, opening the 2nd, now opening the 3rd clinic, has become significantly easier for you as the owner, right?
Yeah. It's a journey, man. But isn't that the journey?
Yeah.
Like, you got to do some hard stuff.
Yeah.
You got to open up a clinic, work your butt off, be scared and nervous, and go through all the challenges and have the sleepless nights and overcome. And once you get on the other side, it's like, now I've got all this I can share with people.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then you can help other people kind of have their mini experience. Like, they're not going to have palpitations like you did as the owner, but like, right. They're going to have their mini challenges and growth. And then it's like, man, and it becomes really, really fun.
You know what else I did? And I know we're just wrapping things up, but I failed to mention, we also provided coaching for our leaders.
I do the same thing.
It was not specific to me and Will.
Oh, really? You know what? I've been thinking about that.
Yeah, I hired a coach, or we hired a coach to work with them.
Yeah.
And what it did for them to be able to say what they could, to have a safe space where they could be open and honest about how they have to interact with me and or Will or both of us was, I think, really beneficial for them. And it gave that coach could provide them strategies on how to approach us and also champion the owners, because we were paying the coaches I mean, out of our own pockets. So they were representing us to a point. So if the leader came to them with an idea that was a little bit fanciful or crazy, or maybe was too expensive, the coach on our behalf would be able to say, you're a little bit crazy right there. Let's think about other options, which then we didn't have to handle and look like the bad guy. So that was a level of investment that we took in, and honestly, we were big believers in coaching. So we spent the money, but I think our team really appreciated it. And I think their capabilities accelerated because they had one-on-one coaching with someone outside of ourselves. So there was an opportunity there. I have to ask before we finish, we mentioned some books, and people routinely appreciate when we mention books that we've read and recommend. What are some in relationship to this that you have recommended? You said Leadership and Self-Deception. What were some others that you'd have your team read?
The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team.
Patrick Lencioni.
Patrick Lencioni. That's a great book.
Right.
I think there's 4 books in our program. It's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That's a really good book.
It's a kind of a basic.
Leadership and Self-Deception. Fantastic book. I would say the majority of people that have read that book all tell me that it's life-changing.
Totally.
It's a great book, and it's a short read.
Yeah.
So
go back and reread it.
Yeah, I know. I might do that too.
Yeah.
And then the last one is E-Myth. We reread E-Myth.
Love E-Myth. Yeah.
And then we have some podcast episodes, and we also have like the cliff notes of some other books.
Okay.
That are like Think and Grow Rich. That's a hard read, so I don't make them read the whole dang book, but
yeah,
some cliff notes.
You know what I do on Think and Grow Rich is I tell them the first 4 chapters.
Yeah.
Just take the first 4 chapters. I mean, I think that's the most impactful part of the entire book. Just do the first.
Right.
There's plenty of other stuff that's good, but if they wanted to keep the reading to a minimum and a lot of the concepts down, first 4 chapters could do really well.
We do Good to Great with Jim Collins. We don't read that book, but again, there's a website and there's little videos of level 5 leadership and the flywheel effect and
cool. Yeah.
Learning all those things.
Good ideas. I love what you're talking about there is maybe just giving them the YouTube clips that explain the concepts.
Correct.
Appreciated from the book. Yes.
Correct. The last one that I really reference a lot is, we have a time management book in there, and I can't remember which one it is, but I'll give you 2. One is Essentialism. I cannot remember the author's name.
Oh, it's not.
Essentialism. It's a great book. It says Essentialism on the front of the cover, and it's like a bunch of squiggly lines. I'll find it and send it to Nathan.
Yeah, yes.
And then the next one is The One Thing.
Yes.
By Keller Williams.
Yeah. Mark.
That's a really good,
Keller.
Keller, is that right?
It's Keller, but I don't remember his first name, but yes.
Okay. Those are 2 good books to help you wrap your head around how to prioritize,
Yeah.
shift around prioritization. Really good books.
Yeah. And for those of you who are thinking about leadership, who not how recently.
Who not how's great, especially with delegation. If you have a delegation problem, who not how.
Yeah. It's more mindset specific to the owner, not necessarily what your leadership team might need to read or watch, unless you notice that your leadership team has a hard time delegating themselves. Then you might want to have them read Who Not How, right? But that's another impactful one. If you're gonna
actually, we have a few clients in our group that are building out clinical director roles, and I would highly, highly, highly recommend reading Rocket Fuel.
Yes.
Rocket Fuel, have you and the director read it together.
Right.
It's like 100 pages long. not very long, but such a good book to lay the foundation of the relationship.
Rocket Fuel is Gino Wickman, right?
Gino Wickman. Yep. Great book.
Very good one. Cool. Thanks, man. Well, our time is up. Another great
Yeah, man.
discussion in the bank. Appreciate it.
Till next time.
Cool. If people wanted to get in touch with you,
Adam at ptoclub.com.
Nathan at ptoclub.com, and check out our website, Physical Therapy Owners Club. All right. Until next time, we'll talk to you in a couple weeks, buddy.
Peace out, man.
See ya.